It's not letting me start video. Unable to start video because you stopped it.
Hello.
Hi. How's your cold care going?
There's your answer.
Hi, John. Hi, Kat.
Hey, I thought it was going to be videoless.
Hi. We can be. We can switch to off camera if we want.
No, it's fine. It wouldn't let me enable my camera, so I guess it just assumed you didn't want to see me.
That's right.
Yeah, hi, I'm here. I also can't start my camera, so wait, let's see. There we go.
Hi.
No.
Hi, everyone.
Always love that background. It just makes me smile. The 2 times I've seen it. I'm like, oh.
Good. Well, it's doing what it's supposed to. So.
Yeah, this is our first, I think our first webinar that was set up through Mighty Networks. And so there's these weird little settings that we're figuring out as we go. That's the camera issue. So no, you certainly don't need to be on camera if you don't want to be.
But we'd love to see your faces if
We do love to see your faces.
We
We really love your muted microphones when you're not talking.
Does that go for you too, Mr. Foster?
We were joking yesterday as a team that until we get back to in-person everything, we have to take advantage of the Zoom features, as we need to, as we can. So we were just teasing, like muting one another or kicking someone out of a Zoom. Because in the near future, we can't just like mute someone live or kick them out of the room. I guess we could kick them out of the room, but that
It's
might
called
take a little bit
duct
more
tape.
time.
Yeah. If you have an in-person meeting, has anyone else noticed how hard it is to pay attention? Like in an in-person meeting, like to just sit there and talk?
I haven't had one.
Oh my goodness, I've had a couple and I'm like, whoa, I'm used to like doodling or I'm looking something up or I'm like, when you have to just sit there. So the rule is I just need to meet with interesting people and then I'll be fine.
That's good.
I didn't go to the Judy Sicorsi charm school, as you well know. So.
Let's see.
I'm just monitoring to see if there's any other. Oh, there's a few others.
Yeah, we have a couple more people dropped in and then we'll get started.
I'm trying to see if there's a way to make a little, I know it shows live on if you're in Beema, but I'm wondering if there's a way to message everybody.
I think there is, Kat, if you go into the event in that upper right corner, the ...
Okay.
Just making everybody, I'm making everybody co-hosts. So this is going to be like one of those CNN roundtables. We'll get mad and talk over each other.
Hey, Jen. Hey, Danielle. Good to see you. All right. So we're super excited. We'll just wait 1 more minute to see if we have anybody else dropping in. And I know a couple of people are maybe going to come in late because I said, come late. That's fine. It's Zoom. Again, you can come in late. It's not like a meeting where you just like walk in 20 minutes after it started.
And did we say we're going to record this for those that had something come up at the last minute, right?
Yeah. And it is, okay. I think
it is being recorded, yeah.
Cool. Well,
okay.
We're going to kick off. Thanks everybody for coming. I know it's the middle of the day. It's the middle of the week. I was born in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day, so maybe they're like, this is the prime time for me. And I see we have somebody else coming in. Great. So what we are gathered here today to talk about is how to talk about your beliefs in a business setting. And we're just going to kind of go through some of the common obstacles. We're going to talk through some reframes of that. We're going to actually kind of level set. So set up what beliefs are from the root and river standpoint as well. And then we're just going to chat about how we do this. We have some techniques to try. We have some takeaways that you can immediately do. And the combination of spiritual and practical is sort of what Root and River is all about. It's what BEMA is all about. So we want to be able to be working at the soul level and working at the reality practical level as well. So that's sort of the overall flow that we want to convey and we want to invite you into and today and then moving forward. So if you ever see any opportunity to have a deeper conversation, whether that's soulfully or practically or both, some combo, just let me know, let Kat know, let Justin know, post it in BEMA, and we can customize something because we want this. We keep saying this in our team meetings. We want BEMA to be a place that we all love coming to, like including Root and River, like that it is something that we're creating as we go together, all of us. So as the early members, this is something that you have as an advantage. You can help us build it together so it suits you and it pleases you. Before we get started fully, we want to ask a quick kind of a icebreaker question, which is, and you can either unmute, we can just unmute if you'd rather not, you can always type it in chat, but what is one thing that you do to overcome fear? So we've all probably had a lot of experience with this over the last year and a half. So what's one thing that you have found that you do to overcome fear that rises up in a moment? And I will share one of my things that I do first, and then maybe Kat can share. One of the things that I do to overcome fear is I let the fear come in and I try not to resist it. So a few years ago, I heard this like fear, like make friends with your worries, make friends with your fears. And when I heard that, I immediately thought of like inviting them in. They're showing up at the door, inviting them in, making them a cup of tea. My instinct is to slam the door and go hide in my bed. But being intentional about saying, okay, no, let's really look at that fear in the face and let's see what we can learn from it. Let's talk to it. So that's one technique that I have. Kat, maybe you might share.
I think for me, when I'm trying to overcome fear, it's usually music that helps me with that. If I'm in that kind of primal fear spot where I feel paralyzed, music usually moves me through. That or getting outside, moving my body, getting on my yoga mat, something like that usually helps me with fear. Coloring, also drawing, coloring, anything, any kind of release, like physical release for me is what I usually go to.
Great, thank you. I see Stephanie in chat said deep breaths. Yes.
And Jen Martin has the same answer as mine, which is to get curious about it. You know, we treat, especially in Western culture, we treat fear as some sort of like, you know, vermin to exterminate, but it's really not. It's here to teach us something, and you can't really learn if you're not curious.
So true. Anybody else?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I would also say what Danielle said was acknowledge it. It's kind of what a combination actually what everyone's saying is like understanding that it's like it's a really primal feeling and like understanding that it's normal and then thinking through it. It's like, well, why am I reacting to it this way? And then how is it going to serve me or not serve me and trying to figure out what to do with it. And then like Kat too, I'll be like, okay, if I need to go on a run or like do some sort of physical thing to just kind of get rid of it, because it is, even if you acknowledge it, you sometimes it's still in your body and you have to get it out. And that's how I deal with it.
Thank you, Noelle. Apologies for the dog barking. That hopefully will die down, but we've had a major incident in the neighborhood, which is the garbage truck has shown up. So Archie is all over this crisis. Thank you for sharing that. And I think we have all kind of gotten better at overcoming fear, but I think the topic of this session still shows that there's like a lot of fear around being vulnerable in business settings, which is essentially what sharing your beliefs is sort of all about. And so just maybe anyone like to share about an incident they might have had where they tried to share beliefs and how that went? Has anybody done that before? Has anybody kind of tiptoed into it, even if it's just a little bit, maybe on social media or something? Has anyone had experience with this before?
Specifically in a business setting.
Go for it, Danielle.
So when I first started working with my current client, I talk a lot about energy work. So because that's, what I believe in, like it sits in your body. And she was really receptive, but she told me the truth. She said, I don't know, this is like a foreign concept to me, but I'm really open to it. And I really appreciated that. So I think she was just like amazing, because I don't think I was expecting that, but it's become more comfortable in the conversation now. So that's a positive thing.
That's great. Yeah, we tend to like expect the worst case scenario, and so to have somebody be reticent but be open is that must have been reassuring. Great.
Yeah, I think that this idea of sharing beliefs in business is more common if you're millennial aged or younger, to be more open about what you believe in, and there's a lot more organic inclusiveness or inclusivity. Boomers older than me, and Gen Xers, my age, we're very much still dealing with the keep work at work and home at home, and sex, politics, and religion, the three things you should never talk about, which is still a good thing to remember. But it also, part of the reason we wanted to have this discussion is that beliefs are part of your root system of your brand. And if you're afraid to express them, then you're starting out the whole branding process from a place of fear. And so learning to overcome that fear of expressing your beliefs has a direct contribution to how you express these beliefs. The second thought we have there is your beliefs are differentiators, because they're part of who you are. They're part of your essence as a human, as an individual. And again, a brand is how other people experience what you believe, according to the lexicon of Root and River. So, but fear can get in the way, because we're pushing back against many hundreds of thousands of years of social programming to not get kicked out of the tribe.
Yeah, that resonates for me, just in this idea that if we don't express the belief, that then we're hiding out, or we're not differentiating ourselves. And as a Gen Xer, there have been more prescriptive ways of showing up in the business world. I actually find that my belief feels really easy and strong because I know the neuroscience that backs it up. So for me, it's helpful to, depending on the audience. I actually do worse when I'm in really spiritual, more, if someone's feeling really like, let's get really deep in this, because I do marry and tip maybe a little bit more to the practical, just
Uh-oh, hopefully Jen will pop back. We lost her there for a second. Well, as we wait for her to come back, we're going to continue this conversation and these kind of level set ideas. Oh, you're back, Jen. Still can't hear. Okay. We're going to start with a little bit of a level set, which is just already what Justin was sharing, that we define brand as how other people experience what you believe. So this relevance of beliefs in branding in general is huge, and it takes some intentionality to identify what those beliefs are first, so that you can then get mindful about how you're practicing them, how you're behaving them. And then the last step, get really practical about how other people are experiencing them. And that's where you can shape and mold, not just by not sharing the belief like literally all the time, but using that belief as a crayon to color an experience. And having this set of beliefs is so important. It's really vital to being able to share them at all within your first circle and then within a broader community. So just a refresher here on the soil of soul, and I just alluded to this, right? That beliefs are what is going on underneath the surface of the ground. They come from the seed that cracks, and they're rooted in our hopes and our fears and our purpose and our failures and our successes, all of these things. And then from that space, they come out of the soil and they become behaviors that are observable, so that other people begin to wonder, oh, I see that Kat is so creative. She must have a belief in beauty or a belief in art. And then finally, we have that brand experience, which is now just much more than just something observable. It's something that the participants can breathe in, can look at and feel elated by. Essentially, that's where it goes from just being about feelings to being about like action and participation. Right. And then when that occurs, the birds and the bees and the hummingbirds are attracted to the flowers. They're attracted to your brand for that brand experience. Like I could raise my hand to feeling drawn to Disneyland, right? I want to kind of step into that world. I want to step into that brand experience and be immersed in it. So that's an example. But as things are being attracted to, there's also a lot that's repelled, and we believe that that's fine. And part of sharing our beliefs is repelling the people who do not believe what we believe. And we have to accept that. But not only that, we kind of organize around it when we're really founding the foundation of our brand. And then when we're getting intentional about how we're going to share it. So we have to, again and again, as human beings who always want to be accepted, we have to again and again say, okay, I'm looking to connect and be accepted. But what's going to happen also is that people are going to be repelled. They're going to reject my way of thinking and being, and that's okay, because I'm not for everyone. So just some level set thoughts there. So core beliefs, how we define them, they're closely held values. They're really at the core of your soul. Another great way to look at them is they're non-negotiables. And you're living your life either consciously or unconsciously or some mixture of both from your beliefs. Even if you're not, every day going, oh, today I'm going to go out and live this belief of love. It's coming through in some way in who you are. And so if you haven't done the work yet to identify what those beliefs are, it's not necessarily coming up with them. It's looking to your life's experiences and looking to your failures, or looking to wonderful things that have happened to you to try to uncover and be a detective to figure out what they are. And if you've already done this work, it's interesting to check back on them. This morning I was journaling, and I got to this point where I was thinking, one of the things I really believe in is communion, like community, but the experience of coming together, different people coming together around a central idea or moment or practice or ritual. That's why I love yoga class. That's why when I was a kid, there was an aspect of church that I loved. It was the coming together, it was the communion. And that word just like jumped out at me. And I was like, oh, I have to look at my personal beliefs, because I really feel like that's one of them. And maybe it's because it's been missing from life for the last year that we've had those common experiences that it jumped out at me, but always good to kind of revisit.
So when we're talking about beliefs, it's important to discern that there's essentially two kinds of beliefs that we have. One is what we would commonly refer to as extrinsic beliefs. Extrinsic beliefs are beliefs that someone else, life, preacher, politician, parent, whatever, taught us to believe. And sometimes these are benign. Like, for example, one of the beliefs that I was taught when I was young is that Chevys are good and Fords are bad. That turned out not to be true. But they can also be, and this is where you start to see extremism and racism and misogyny and some of those, where you take it to the nth degree, where people are just adopting the same belief systems that they were raised in. What we're talking about beliefs is intrinsic beliefs. Intrinsic beliefs are about going inward, as Em said, and examining it through contemplation, really through contemplativeness, what you say, what is actually important to you. And those are the beliefs that we're talking about. The external beliefs, or the extrinsic beliefs, they're not necessarily real because you adopted them. But the intrinsic beliefs, there's something about the human experience, which is you've carried these with you your entire life. So when some of you have been through some of our root session with us, and you remember the exercise that we did to uncover things like, what did you use to get in trouble over? What would you be willing to commit civil disobedience over? Those are things that you're attaching to that visceral feeling of a belief. And that visceral feeling of a belief is the thing that gets expressed. That's the transferable passion or enthusiasm or righteous indignation necessary in order for a belief to be expressed, effectively.
Yes. So we'll throw these questions up on the screen if you want to do a screen grab, and then they'll be also in the deck. We'll share the deck afterwards. And these are just some of the questions that we ask when we're working with people individually to help evoke those beliefs. So if you haven't ever looked at these or thought to answer them, these are there for you to kind of loop back to dig into beliefs. And like I said, we'll share those. And we do to try to distill when we're working with clients one-on-one, distill them down to one word each, and then kind of go from there, building upon them. So that's something that we would suggest. And if 5 seems like too much, that's typically the number that we shoot for, but start with 1, start with 2. It doesn't have to be, Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't have to have all your beliefs perfectly in place before you start sharing them. So we want to talk about the obstacles that come up, right? And I think the things that stop us, the way that fear manifests in stopping us from sharing our beliefs. And then we're going to get into some reframing, and then we're going to chat. So work isn't the place. How many people have heard this before? Work isn't the place for beliefs / feelings, what have you. Is anyone, don't do that here. Yes, thank you. So that's definitely, that's a common thought and belief, as Justin mentioned earlier, particularly with some of the, with Gen Xers and baby boomers. It was really established in the industrial era for sure, when people were really treated like machines, and machines don't run as efficiently, was the mindset on feelings.
Yeah, and then so much of the human condition over the last, 40,000 years has been about survival. And there's some truth to this, in the sense that if you're operating from the low end of Maslow's hierarchy, sitting around thinking about what you believe in is going to get you killed. But thankfully, we have elevated our standard of living in general across the globe. And with a elevated standard of living comes an opportunity for an elevated level of consciousness, which is why, it's a sign of a developed nation to have existential crises, or to put it the way I used to put it, which is if you're from a developing country, there aren't any vegetarians, because everybody's just trying to eat. Not that there's anything wrong with vegetarians, but it's just an example of this idea that it's not bad, that it's not bad, it's just dated. It served its purpose, it's time for an upgrade.
Yeah, I don't know about that quote, because India was a developing country for a long time. A lot of vegetarians there.
Well, most of my ideas break down under scrutiny, Emily. You know that firsthand.
That's a good segue into our next obstacle, right? which is I don't want to offend someone, right? I don't want to say something that is going to offend someone. I think this is the big one. I see a lot of head nodding. And as a people pleaser myself, definitely comes up. And so we're going to tackle that with some reframing. And then what if people don't like what I say and then they leave? Well, to the earlier discussion about Zoom, that's okay. They can just like leave the room. It won't upset you. Yeah, a lot of times I think about this is that might happen. Again, facing down that fear. And then finally, the last one, which I think is at like the center of all of these, is that I don't know what to say. And that can be sort of a two-headed monster. It's that I don't really know what my beliefs are. And if I did, I'm not sure how I would express that. So that is definitely, can you all feel that? I don't know what to say. That's why you're here. So we want to reframe these a little bit, kind of place counter arguments into your noggins on these. So the first one is that work is the place for beliefs. A quote from Daniel Kahneman, who is the 2002 winner of the Nobel Prize for Economics, I thought was really relevant here, which is that business is more about emotions than most business people care to admit. It's time to put the passion for work and the joy of creation back into business. And I think in the last 15 months, and even prior to that, we have seen a place for activism. We have seen the business world embrace that. John, you've certainly led those conversations about how people do it. The ship is turning, and work is really becoming the place for beliefs. And it's becoming the place where if you are a workplace that is steeped in a set of core values, you are going to attract the talent, the young talent in particular, that is seeking that out very intentionally. Millennials, Gen Zers, they're looking for workplaces that have very obvious and often shared beliefs. So we would just say that is the reality, that is a trend that is continuing to develop, that began probably about 10 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago. So data. So, when you don't want to offend someone, a lot of times we stick to data, right? Let's just stick to the numbers. Let's stick to the safe areas. And that feels better, right? That's why a lot of people in our space, in the marketing space, they just want to talk about ROI. They want to talk about the numbers and the metrics. And that feels better than really getting into what your brand is all about. But data doesn't allow you to connect with a human decision maker. And the human decision maker is really the heart, is really the emotional center of the brain. So that's where all decisions are made. And if we're only talking about data and we're only sticking to the safe, neutral zones, we're not really engaging our audience. We're not really asking them to buy in subtly through the expression of our beliefs. So data will only get you so far. The brain makes a decision emotionally, then logically justifies it. But data can't do both of those things.
And this is where you see also where there's insecurity about expressing beliefs, where the tendency is to, instead of expressing the belief, you express some sort of data point that makes you feel comfortable sharing it. And you hear this a lot in the kind of whataboutism that happens in political dialogue these days, but it happens in business settings as well, where it's not so much that the other party is interested in data, it's that the deliverer of that belief is trying to use data to cover up insecurity. And it's kind of a learned response to do that, because in a lot of corporate environments, they're always asking, well, what's the, as Em said, what's the ROI and yada yada. To quote our amazing Chief of Staff, Kat Weiss, when asked about the ROI of branding, she said, what's the ROI of not being dead inside? Which is awesome.
I think that's one of Dustin's favorite quotes ever.
It's my first favorite quote. The second one is the one from Dennis that we use about being offended, which is try to offend all of the offendable people as possible. So
definitely a gem. Finally, this reframing of the idea that I don't know what to say. So businesses that, oh wait, no, sorry, the counter to, this is the counter to, what if people don't like what I say and they leave? So businesses that stand by their beliefs outperform those that don't. And there is a boatload of data that is supporting this statement. So we didn't just make it up, but typically when businesses take political stances, they will see a lot of people leave. There'll be there'll be a little cancel wave, and then you see the support kind of come back to the brand. Nike experienced this, but has had net growth over the time that they've been very active in brand activism. So we're not going to lie and say everyone's going to love you from the beginning, and although that's becoming common and the dips are becoming less, despite all of the news about cancel culture, the dips are becoming less extreme. And so people may leave. Again, you're going to repel. But over time, the businesses are committed to their beliefs outperform those that never say anything about what they're driven by. All right, and then the last one, which is you do know what to say. You think you don't know what to say, but you do. You have a set of beliefs inside of you. It's just about doing a little bit of footwork to get really clear on what they are. They've already been guiding you consciously, unconsciously throughout your life. And all you need to do is just sharpen up that knife, get very more confident on what you truly believe. And then that's where you'll gain the ability to use those words in conversations, which is where we're going to next. But before we go there, I just want to point out that, beliefs are part of the overall traits of a flourishing brand. So practicing them, but these are some of the other ones as well. And this is kind of work that we do with our clients. And you'll see these themes come up in BIMA. So if you think, oh yeah, beliefs, that's what brand is about, totally. No, it's part of a larger picture. So you don't have to stay stuck in that. It's not the only thing that you as a diverse brand can bring to conversations. There's lots of other tools of a flourishing brand. You can talk about mission, you can talk about vision, you can talk about the standards that you have, you can talk about your category, your audience, and so it's not the only thing that makes a brand stand out, an intrinsic brand stand out. All right, so make it real. We love to make it real. This is the practical. So here's first thing you want to do before you do any of these is to dig into those beliefs. And we gave you a little bit of framing around that earlier. But if you already have them, or you have one or two, like, oh, I really believe in love, let's say. Here are some actual practical things that you can do with your beliefs that begin to build your confidence in how you share them and when you share them. So the first one is to write an introductory letter to your prospects telling them about your beliefs. So this could be somebody who is interested in your services, or it could be someone that you've talked to and just maybe they're a partner for your brand. So instead of following up with a standard email, hey, I enjoyed meeting you, put together, maybe it's one paragraph because maybe you're working off of one belief, put together a little standard paragraph about, before we go further in this discussion or in this relationship, what I'd really love to do is to share with you what some of my beliefs are, or what this belief is, and then how I think you're going to experience it. If you want to go further, you can even say, please let me know if we're off track, if we're ever straying away from this belief. So it's one-to-one, so it takes down all of those threats and those fears, but it gives you a way to start sharing about your brand. It sounds like, Danielle, you almost did this in that conversation with the person you were speaking to when you started talking about energy. But this is just a kind of a writing version of that. If you do have a set of beliefs, you can write a series of blog posts about each one. And it doesn't have to be long. These can also be, the next one is like convert them into social. So maybe they're a series of social. So maybe you got 2 or 3 beliefs and then you just kind of drip those out once every few weeks. Hey, today I really want to share that, I believe in beauty, or I believe in knowledge, and here's why. That is so much more interesting than plugging a product, or, even resharing things. This is something that really exposes people to that root system of your brand. And again, as people respond, as they like, as they comment, as they share those, it does build the confidence and there is no separation really between business and personal anymore. So these are acts of we think everything that you do as a brand is your business. So you're beginning to have that conversation there. Whoops, go back. Next one. Explain how you live each belief in your brand. So this could be about page copy on your website. If you haven't refreshed your about page copy yet, this is a great place to start. So instead of starting with, this is what I do, here are my services, blah, 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 start with, my 3 core beliefs are X, Y, and Z. And so, people always want to know WWIFM, what's in it for me? I might have said that wrong. So you want to say, I believe in this, and this is how you're going to experience that. So I believe in discernment. That means when we get into our engagement, I'm going to be very deliberate, and I want to hear from both. I want to hear from everyone's perspective before I make a decision, for example. That can inform and set the standards of what you'd like to experience, or the experience you'd like to give, and provides a way to be in conversation, or to be proactive about how your clients are going to experience the brand. And then lastly, after you work with someone, or maybe this could be for a larger group or a larger organization, right? After you've worked in a group for a long time, you could share either as a group or pull someone aside to say, hey, I have this set of beliefs. How have you experienced this in our work together? And you can either do that in a conversation or an email. If you have a chance to jot down a comment, those can be used as testimonials, and far more interesting of a testimonial than just, oh, Danielle was great, Noelle did the best design work. It's like, Noelle believes in being eclectic, and I experienced that because blah, 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 blah. That's way more intriguing and evocative than a standard testimonial.
There's a few others that we've thought about, then these may be kind of a combination of techniques or maybe a reframing of your mindset. But there's some practicality here. One is to focus on sharing beliefs that sort of transcend the traditional tracks of beliefs around essentially ideology and theology. I mean, there's a lot of beliefs that can go in there. If you stick to philosophy or like universal principles like respect, love, integrity, freedom, that's a good place to start. You can see examples of how talking about beliefs that way reframe things. For example, LGBTQ rights have been framed away from like fairness only or equality to more about love, and especially when DOMA was overturned as an example of that. Another one is more contemplative, which is to be honest about what your intention is for expressing your beliefs. And this is a reminder to myself that as a person that likes to argue or challenge people, that am I sharing a belief just because I feel like agitating someone, or is it a genuine expression of the heart? And speaking of the heart, there's this idea of think with your heart first. As Em talked about earlier, we do know what to say. And you put it in more spiritual terms, our hearts know what to say. But when you think with your heart, this will give you words to say, and then there's confidence that comes with that. And then finally, that expressing your beliefs is a practice unto itself. It needs its own kind of muscularity. There's a lot of ways to do that. Em mentioned some already about writing, writings, presentations, but also in your own like more inner world, which is, or inner circle and inner world, like in journaling, journal on your beliefs, get used to expressing them in writing, even if you never share them, or in safer one-to-one conversations, share some of those beliefs. And that gives you a sense of, okay, when it's time to share your beliefs in a more public format, it's not the first time you've done it. You've got some, like I said, muscle or some practice behind that. And then there was one more, which is just essentially don't trust fear. We touched on this already, related to the psychological and neurological reasons why we're worried about offending people and insecure about what to say. And if you know what you believe and you say it anyway, your mind will catch up. If you don't say what you believe, your heart won't catch up. You'll just get discouraged, and your mind will be like, yeah, I'm in control again. But it's either going to be tepid or insipid. It's not going to have any sort of density to it if it comes from just the mind. And so there's an element of this of do it anyway. But as we say about personal brands, is be yourself, but not too much. Is you do want to express your beliefs, but you can structure experiences to do those in a way that kind of builds your confidence as you go.
And I think it's just like everything else. Like we wouldn't say, yes, hit up your Instagram every day with like your beliefs, boom, boom, boom. It's just like we wouldn't say to do that with your offerings. It just gets boring, right? We want that variety. We want that good mix. So mixing it in there. I will add those to the deck before we send those out. So with all of this in mind, we want to kind of turn into discussion mode and use the rest of our time to discuss. So thinking about everything you've heard, and this is just a starter question. So if you have other questions about anything we said or comments or things that struck you, please feel free to jump in on this. But in hearing everything that we shared today, is there one way that jumped out at you that you thought, oh, maybe I could try that? What is one way, essentially a little bit of a brand dare, a little bit of a challenge? What is one way that you could see yourself beginning to share your beliefs and your brand?
I like the idea of when you're talking one-on-one with a potential, client or a current client, of sharing that either through an email or I was thinking too with like onboarding or in a like proposal format, showing like, here's what I believe in, here's how the experience is going to go for you. I really like that idea of it being more still about them. It's still your belief, but it's about them, and framing it in that way is really valuable because you are really building a relationship, and so, or starting to build a relationship. And so knowing the cornerstone of belief could be shared, or they know what they're getting into in a more human way, that really resonated with me, and I want to do that.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to differentiate. We flashed up on the screen that differentiation is one of the practices of a flourishing brand, and those two kind of are really great bedfellows, right? To say, I believe this, but here's how you're going to experience it, and then that is a differentiator for you, because nobody buys anything anymore for logical reasons, really. They buy it for how it's going to make them feel. Thank you. No, that's awesome. Anybody else? Oh, I think there was a comment. Kat?
Yes, Stephanie added in the comments, blogging, newsletters, about us on website. That's great.
Yeah, sometimes that about us page can become, I know it's hard when we looked at it, right? What are we going to put here? But beliefs can kind of be helpful. And I think it's content that will really jump out. Looks like we have another comment coming in.
Here, let's see. Piggybacking on what Stephanie posted on website, you can incorporate it into values in team bios. Susan's idea. That's great.
I love that about team bios. That's a great idea. One of our clients, Stream Logistics here in Phoenix, they do something really cool where they have members of the team come forward and speak to their beliefs. Like they almost recognize one another on the basis of, oh, this person really embodied this belief this week. And it reinforces the belief. It makes it a cultural norm, and it's not the leadership doing it, it's everyone else. So it really becomes a practice, but you could definitely also weave those into like each individual bio. So that's a great idea. Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, and I think if you are leading a team, if you're a founder of a company with a team, or you're the marketing leader of a team, there's going out and getting stories that support the beliefs of the organization, that like employee spotlights, client spotlights, vendor partner spotlights. They all, people learn about beliefs through story. It's an ancient tradition that's been lost largely in marketing, where most what we call story is really just pitching. One of the great benefits of having a robust belief system, a robust codified, articulated belief system, is that it becomes an eternal spring for these kinds of stories. And those are often the best ways to share these ideas rather than just boldly proclaim, here's who I am, here's what I believe. Tell a story to associate with it.
Yep, so much more powerful. Definitely. Danielle, your story is staying with me from earlier, and I'm riffing on it in terms of sharing beliefs. So I just had this thought that came to me of like, if you have your core beliefs, let's say for yours, like yours is an energy, let's say one of them. And then somebody like, you have that discussion in person. Wouldn't it be cool if you had some sort of an infographic that really describes that for someone, like visually represent, because like that's something that is esoteric to her. She doesn't quite understand it, but how cool would it be to create something visually that's like, hey, I know we had a discussion about energy. I just wanted to forward this to you. It's something that I use to educate people on what energy is, because I get that question a lot. So that was just kind of an idea that popped in my mind.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think John's got a comment in here. John, do you want to share what you said, or do you want me to read it here?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a little harder, I think, because you can write stuff and put it out there, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a little harder if you're on a board or other committees that are interagency, inter-community, whatever the case may be, and how you show up around governance, or because a lot of them tend to lean towards just give me a yes and so we can move on. So how you show up on that, I think, can be a little more challenging, but it's also part of your beliefs and brand. And just a side comment, I guess, too, just it's kind of interesting right now. I don't know if you're familiar with Basecamp, and they've kind of just uprooted their beliefs and took them in another direction, causing a lot of, well, for me, curiosity as to what really prompted it. But it's kind of interesting, I guess, when an organization does pretty dramatically change their beliefs, the churn that it can happen, not only within the workplace, but customers or others that have kind of followed some of their thought leadership.
I think that's a great comment. And there's a lot of that. Actually, I was just reading an article yesterday in Forbes about a luggage company. I think their name was Arrive, something similar to that. And all their beliefs were shiny and beautiful, and they were not true. And so it was just being exposed over and over again. And the pandemic hit, and now they have a new CEO and the article was about how she's going and listening and doing listening circles and really trying to build the belief set again from what is and from their failures. So I think that's
I think, John, to your point too, is there's a term that we sometimes use called woke washing, which is brands that are pretending to be enlightened so that they appeal to millennials or whatever they think the reason is. And sometimes it's sort of good intentions, bad execution. Sometimes it's pretty malicious, actually. And an example of that where, well, we know this, that if you don't articulate and live out or embody your beliefs, you will resort to survival beliefs, because there's got to be beliefs drive behavior. So they got to come from somewhere. So consciousness allows you to operate from a place of more intrinsic beliefs. But if you don't actually live by what you say you believe, then survival kicks in. WeWork being the greatest example of this, which, you talk about the mighty fall of a brand from all these ideas, all this talk about DEI and new workforce and everything. And, it turns out to be a company run by another narcissistic asshole. It's not all that different than anything else that's happened with other companies and other brands over the years. And I wondered if someone was inside the organization was like, whoa, there's this cognitive dissonance between what we say we believe and what we actually believe. Now, we all fall short as humans with that, but when it becomes an organizational behavior to not speak up, then you get corruption, and corruption inevitably leads to the death of a brand.
Just another word too, John, on like governance, and I think that's a really good point as well. Like there's some instances, and I was going to weave this in, but I forgot, which is like you have to really think about context, right? You don't want to, when you're in this moment of wanting to share your beliefs, a lot of it is context. If you're a board member, that might not be appropriate, or it might be really appropriate. So my husband works a lot with boards for an organization that has Christian roots, but has become way more secular. But there are board members that really come from, and the reason they're there is because of those beliefs. And so it's an interesting balance to watch him sort of try to integrate that foundation and honor it. And he does want to hear from people from a conviction standpoint, but it's a sticky place. But I think the people who do have convictions, those voices can really carry pretty far. So if you're silent and you don't share, that could be doing the organization a disservice as well.
That point too of being on in a position of power in a company too. I think it reminded me of something that happened to me when I was new at a studio, young, like my first job, and I wanted to include a lot of diverse images in a brochure, and I was told that I couldn't because it wouldn't sell. Yeah, this happened. And I think like I, changed what I was doing because I wasn't in a position of power. And so obviously there's been a reckoning around that, but I think a lot of the company, like being on something to think of as like, I'm probably on the younger side of everyone here, but like I'm still starting to be in a position where I'm hiring people and thinking about creating a space for people to be able to share their beliefs without them feeling the fear when when they're in a position where like they feel like if they share a belief and are wrong that they'll get fired or that they'll I think maybe, I don't know, I'm a millennial, maybe like the Gen Z is like a little bit maybe braver, but just I think about that too, is like something to think about with belief. It's like, it's not only our belief, but allowing space for other people to have that as well when you're in a position to do that. And I think that's where too, like places like Away and there's like a bunch of direct-to-consumer companies that all kind of got or dragged through the coals when their beliefs didn't match up. And I think that's part of it, is that they the people at the top are sharing these beliefs that like other people in the company couldn't, or felt like they couldn't speak up. So
that's a great point.
Yeah.
Noelle. Thank you for saying that. Mm-hmm.
I think too, related to that, Noelle, is that we want to be as inclusive as possible. It's a good idea. It's good business to be inclusive, but that also means then that there has to be a boundary. And I was fascinated to watch what happened with brands that have never spoken about their beliefs ever after the January 6th thing. Marriott is the one I go to the most, because Marriott in the 120 years had never made a political statement about anything. And Michael Jordan said back in the 80s why he didn't talk about politics, and he said Republicans buy shoes too. Well, they're part of knowing what your intrinsic beliefs are an extension of that is having the boundaries to say, I'm not going to do business with you. I'm not going to support this. I'm not going to be quiet. You saw this with NASCAR and the rebel flag, which is an amazing thing that NASCAR as a brand would do that, or Coca-Cola and Major League Baseball pulling out of Georgia in some extent, or condemning the voter suppression stuff going on there. And I think that's part of the equation that gets forgotten, which is why it requires leaders of, if you're a solo brand to the CEO of a big giant brand, have to have that soft front, strong back view of the world, so when to say no, we're not going to do this. We have run out of our ability to tolerate things as happened on January 6th.
But just on that point, I mean, some of those leaders have backed away from their early statements where they said they weren't going to give political contributions, and now it shows up that they are. I think companies like Microsoft, as an example, where they said we're not giving any of them money for 2 years, period, and we'll reevaluate after that. I think that's putting accountability into their statement versus making the statement and then 3 months later all of a sudden the contributions start flowing again.
Yeah, good point.
Very good point. And smart, I mean, just from totally like a logical standpoint, smart brand management, like give yourself a time frame. It's like step away. It's almost like giving yourself a timeout. And then that's way easier to hold yourself accountable to, and the market will hold you accountable. And you set the expectation instead of saying, oh, we don't agree with that. Oh, here's this money. We always teach whenever there's that inconsistency, it will be found out and it will fracture. It will damage your brand. So I think that was really, really smart on their part. And the other thing is, I think this came to me too, is yes, our world is so overly politicized, but I think, and Justin may have touched on this, it is about beliefs that transcend politics. And so I think even just saying that again, like saying that we can have beliefs that don't apply to politics. That is a statement, funnily enough, sounds kind of bold right now, but I think it's something that people need to hear. And even just having discussions like this one, where we are talking about beliefs, is important as well.
Yeah, and you look at not all, I mean, there's a certain level of like relativism, I suppose, but not all beliefs are that they respond differently to market pressure. So you see what's happened with the My Pillow guy and his beliefs. So he's led by his beliefs, but the market is going, well, here's $60 million less than you made the year before, as an example of that. And that's why we talk about your market pressure and social pressure are basically the same thing now, but you still need to be sincere about what you believe in. So he may seem crazy, but I guess I sort of begrudgingly admire the fact that he's still sticking to his guns, even though the market is telling him that he's wrong in addition to everybody else.
We want to take the last couple of minutes to share some exciting news. So as of today, we are launching a new program. It's an 8-week program called Brand Camp. So we're going to Brand Camp, and I have something to share on that, so you can see a little bit about it. But you may have also seen it come up inside of BIMA. If you look in the circles, you can find more information there. So it's an 8-week program, 90-minute meetings every Friday, led by myself and Justin and supported by our amazing team. And participants are going to be supported and guided through some of those, through all of those practices of a flourishing brand. And whether you've done work with us before, there's some new things. We're going to be mapping the emotional journey of the brand with you. We're going to be dealing more with mindset and kind of doing a little bit of a deeper dive into where you're coming from as a brand. And it's going to be structured very much like this. So we'll present some content and there'll be discussion and sharing, and then some commitments at the end for the following week. So that is going on. I'm super happy to report that as BIMA members, that lesser price of $14.99, $500 off is good for the whole thing. So that would be the cost for members. So check that out if you get a chance. And if you know somebody else who maybe hasn't done any brand work, and maybe think about recommending that to them and doing it together. It's always good to go with a friend, particularly to camp. So we're really excited to share that.
When is it starting?
Oh,
I was going to just say, when is it starting?
It starts May 21st and it'll go through July 9th, I think is the last Friday. And we'll record all the sessions. There'll also be a private channel within BIMA where we can have further discussions, and assets will be placed in there and resources and that kind of thing. So if you don't want to go the full route of doing a root session, this is another opportunity to grow along the same path.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll see it pop up in BIMA in a little bit, that we're going to do a sneak preview webinar that everyone's invited to, the public as well. So you'll see that pop up as well.
So thank you all for coming. And like we said, we will post this deck and the recording inside of the main BIMA. And any last thoughts, team?
No, it's fun. Thank you. Good, vigorous conversation. good afternoon cup of coffee type conversation. So thank you.
All right. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right, we'll look forward to the
Bye,
next one.
everybody.
Bye-bye.